Hi, it's Jessie. I'm back again, and this morning I want to talk to you about controlling the narrative, okay? The former Attorney General Bill Barr, he would say that this is the age of the narrative. And that's one way to put it. Another way to put it would be to say that it's the age of the Gentiles, an age where there is no covenant. And another would be to say that it is the age of exile, you know? And in all three of these instances, we have an appearance of truth, but there is no truth. Okay, so we're going with the age of the narrative, controlling the narrative, and how do they do that? Remember, I told you in the last video that I'm going to break down to you how these people do things, and why they do things, I watched this documentary a while ago, and it said that world powers remain in power when they remain secret. They said as soon as somebody finds out about them, then they can be taken down. But as long as they remain in secret, they withstand the test of time because nobody knows about them. And how does nobody know about them? Well, nobody knows about them because they're behind the scenes pulling strings. There might be one face in leadership, but that face is not working their own agenda. They're working somebody else's, They've been, what's the word for committed into like a relationship with like a party, like say a Democratic Party or a Republican Party. I'm using those terms because those are familiar to you, and they each have their own sets of ideologies, right? And they each have their own agenda, right? But you see different faces all the time in each one of the parties. Well, not all the time. Some people have been there for like 50 years, and they're still pulling strings and still expressing power, And it's not their own power that they're expressing. They gang up in bandwagons, right? Like when the Speaker McCarthy cut this deal with Joe Biden with the budget, right? His party had big problems with him, and some of them retaliated against him for not going their way. And in this instance, we can see how people pull strings behind the scenes to get their agenda across. And when their agenda is not gotten across, they retaliate and they punish. And so it's hard to correct these arrangements that are made in the dark. And it's hard to know whose purpose these people are serving when they do things like this, when they sabotage, undermine, and just ruin good policies because they want to get even because they didn't get what they wanted in the first place, and so they stall government so that it doesn't function at all. You see, these are like examples of someone behind the scenes pulling strings, These people, I'm sure, are not working their own agenda. They are put in office by adopting agendas, They are funded by super PACs, and who runs the super PACs? And not only that, but they belong to secret societies, secret clubs, and who runs the clubs, So when you see a face right here, right now, they may be working on an agenda from 50 years ago, and you don't know it, because that agenda from 50 years ago was put forth by someone who belonged to possibly the same club, or maybe it was of their own volition, But they put forth this thing, and it takes time to get bad policies across, you see. They need things to happen for bad policies to get across. They need a disaster like 9/11. They need an act of just terrorism to get some policies across so that, we give up our freedom. We give up our liberty, and we allow them to monitor us 24/7, We allow for our rights to be violated because of fear. Whereas, 50 years ago, people would be going, no, 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 you're going to do bad things with that, because they've always done bad things when they start spying on people, They squeeze the noose a little tighter. They learn how to get their agenda across. They learn how to stir up trouble for people, so that they stay distracted. They stay submissive. They stay uninvolved here because they're busy elsewhere. And if they're busy all the time, they can't pay attention to what's going on up there. They keep people in a state of constant strife, so that they can remain in the power that they're in. And when they don't divide you within the house, they divide you on issues, and they divide you on issues that are matters of opinion and not matters of law. And they try to make opinion into law, and we're over here fighting sides and not realizing that we're actually undermining law. We're voiding law, and we're doing it by our own choice without even realizing, hey, they're destroying the Constitution, but they're controlling the narrative all along, so we don't understand like what it is that they're doing. These people are these people that control the narrative, in the age of the narrative, the exiles, the Gentiles. There's like no accountability there, and there's no accountability there because they put the burden of their choices on the backs of the people. Like, you choose which way. Choose which way. Choose which way. Choose which way. Because if you choose which way, then the law is void. It doesn't matter which way you choose. The law is void. You're eating up more and more of your rights. You're giving more and more of your power to them. You're enabling this whole master puppet society that we got going on, and you don't even realize it. You don't realize it because the way that they propose their undermining of the law seems like a relevant issue. It seems authentic, but it's not, because they're reducing the law, which is blind to opinion, to a matter of opinion, and you don't see it going on because they control the narrative, right? Now, this is the big bad way of controlling the narrative. There are smaller ways of controlling the narrative, when they attack you directly, and then they'll pretend like it never happened. They'll pretend like you're crazy. I've learned that crazy is actually an alibi for these fools, because they happen to do a lot of crazy making stuff, and then they're like, oh, we wouldn't do that, and they act like you're the bad one for realizing what they have done. This is a way of controlling the narrative. Another thing that they do is they fight you through your family. They fight you through the people around you, and they do it ever so subtly. They win over favor, allowing things like puffing people up with entitlement, like allowing them special privileges to do wrong, to maybe not get their work done, to maybe have some special privilege somewhere, to maybe have some kind of benefit somewhere, like they'll, I don't know, give you public benefits, or they'll give you a discount on interest for your car, they'll give you siding for your house. Don't worry, the insurance is going to pay for it, even though it doesn't pay for anybody else's. They have all kinds of ways of getting under people's skin and getting them under their hooks, And then once they're under their hooks, they start sowing like, if you discipline your child, they'll make it sound like that discipline is abuse. They'll puff it up, and because the child who's done wrong, they don't realize that when somebody says something and makes their parents look like the bad one, and they don't realize that this is actually a manipulative action going on here. They don't realize what's going on. And so they turn against their parents and turn towards these people who give them permission to do wrong, who protect them from the ones who discipline them or who would correct them, you know. They put ideas in their head to cause more problems, you know. It's ridiculous, the things that they do. And then in the end of it, you call them out on this nonsense, they'll attack the child, you know. They'll discredit the child. They'll say the child is the one that's wrong. And no, the child is the one who has been manipulated. The child is the one who deserves mercy because they were too young to recognize the game. Most adults don't recognize the game, you know. You don't understand. You don't know what they're doing because they're like, well, do you like blue or pink? And you're like, oh, I like blue. Oh, that means she's gay. You know, you have no idea what their questions mean. You have no idea what their choices mean. You have no idea what story they're telling behind the scenes. You have no idea. Everything is tricky in the age of the narrative when somebody else is crafting it. I mean, can you imagine that you should be judged for your song choices? Can you imagine? Not only did they judge me for my song choices, my music choices, they had my bishop to tell me that they were going to be judging me for my song choices, so be careful what I listen to. You know, it's ridiculous, the things that they do, you know. And that it made me understand why, like, way back when, they were like, don't listen to that music, the rock music. And maybe it wasn't because their parents were so old-fashioned, but because their parents had learned, because these people judge you by your song choices. Now, we put the blame back on the parents and say they're old-fashioned, and we say they're out of touch, but we don't realize that they're actually trying to teach us to avoid judgment. You know, I had no idea that I'd be judged for my song choices, and when I learned that I would be judged for the music I listened to, it made me think of way back when. And then it made me think, you know, when they're controlling this narrative, when they're like undermining the law and making everything about opinion, making everything about choice, you know, did they like change the narrative so we would be ignorant of the law that they can judge us by our music choices? I don't know. Was there ever a law saying that this could be? Is this why parents way back when was like, don't listen to that music? You know, like, what's going on there? Were they right back then? Did we undermine them so that we could have open judgment throughout the generations without anybody knowing? Could this be why there's so much sickness in the world? You know? Because when you have a judgment, when you have a condemnation, it brings a curse, you know? If you don't know the law, you know, in America we say ignorance of the law is no excuse, right? And so if they have undermined the law in such a way, they have undermined the rules in such a way that we disqualify the people who are actually teaching us the law, we are in big trouble. And, you know I sound crazy saying this. I know how crazy it sounds, okay? But there's some truth there, you know? And it all goes with controlling the narrative. It all goes with undermining the law. It all goes with judgment off of nonsense, you know? Where everybody is condemned, where you can't get out of it, you know? We got to be careful with this whole thing about controlling the narrative, because those who are controlling the narrative only want to see us condemned. And that's why in my last video, when I said, when they tell me choose, I say, what do I look like, Moses? You know, am I the lawbringer? I don't want to be the one who brings the law, because you have to be responsible for the law. You mess up the law, and like Moses, you don't get into the promised land, you know. There are consequences. There are real consequences for toying with the law. You don't want to be responsible for that. It's better to follow the laws that are in place, you know. But they don't tell you this when they're controlling the narrative and undermining the law, which protects you from their judgment, you know. They're not telling you this. They're telling you, go ahead and listen to that rock music. Don't worry, your parents are just out of touch. They're old-fashioned, you know. They're off the rocker crazy. But, you know, 50 years later, and I'm not 50 years old, I'm actually 70 years later. What am I talking about? It's been a long time, right? Now we have this standard where I can be judged for the music I listen to. Someone has controlled the narrative, undermined the law, made me ignorant of the law, and then condemned me by the law. That's some crazy stuff right there. As crazy as I sound, that is crazy. That is ridiculous. It's dangerous to have an age of a narrative. We need someone of the law to teach us law. And how do we learn this? Like, what do we do? What laws are important? Should we listen to Eckhart Tolle, with the laws of attraction? I'm sorry, but I've read his books before, and they're like a rebranded version of a mix of Hinduism, Buddhism, and Torah. So if I'm going to follow, like, Hinduism, Buddhism, or Torah, wouldn't it make more sense for me to follow the original ones who wrote it, and not the ones who rebranded it? Because this rebranding offers no protection. The rebranding puts all the power in my hands and gives me no protection of, say, Torah. Because Torah is actually protection. It teaches you the wisdom that you know to evade the traps of the enemy, teaches you the tools that the enemy uses, teaches you the laws with God, like when you have sin, just go jump in the lake. Go jump in a body of water not filled by man, and it will cleanse you. It's basically, essentially, going in the mikveh, right? So, if I'm going to follow these laws and they don't carry the resolutions, they don't tell me things like in the full detail that the Torah tells me things, then these things over here are going to get me in trouble, because they tell me things, but they don't offer me the resolution, and they give me all the responsibility. But if I listen to Torah, it tells me things, it teaches me the law, it breaks down stuff for me, and it tells me to go jump in the lake. I'm good with that. I got a resolution there, If I listen over here with this whole age of the narrative, they want to appoint me as the judge, and they want me to say who's to blame. And I don't know, maybe I'm that abomination that causes desolation and makes the offering stop in the temple. But their offerings are nonsense, complete, total, utterly ridiculous. You fight me through people so then you can go back and blame people. That's not right, because you're pulling cords. You're being manipulative. When you say something, people believe you because you sit in a position of power, because you have privilege and authority. That's wrong. We're not going to put the blame on the people you use. You're going to hold that blame to yourself. So am I the abomination that causes desolation? Maybe. Maybe, and maybe it's not such a bad thing. Because I'd rather not do this. See, the problem with controlling the narrative is that it offers no resolution. It offers no redemption. That person that you blame for your own sin has to carry that sin through all time without the chance of redemption, because it wasn't theirs to begin with, number one. Number two, because you're going to hound them and make sure that you can control the narrative around them. You stalk them through time. You watch them. You spy on them through their neighbors, through every connection that they make. You control the narrative. They have no liberty. They have no freedom, and I know because I'm there, right? It's a very dangerous thing, having someone control the narrative, and understanding that this lack of redemption that you have for yourself by putting the blame on, say, your sacrifice, the person that you use, the lack of redemption that you have, the amount of energy that you have to expel. If you only learn Torah, if you say you're sorry for something to your brother, to the person that you wronged, and they don't forgive you, say you're sorry again. And if they still don't forgive you, say you're sorry again. Because after so many times of saying you're sorry, you don't have to worry about saying you're sorry no more. you can let that mess go, right? You don't have to worry about them forgiving you. You can let it go and forgive yourself. You can go jump in the lake and be clean and free of it and good with God. You don't have to control the narrative. You just got to apologize 3 times. This is on Torah, right? If you learn the law, if you learn Torah, you would have learned some resolutions for this nonsense. But because you don't know the law, you want to fight people through people and then blame those people for the attack. It's wrong. It's wrong on so many levels, and you don't even know how wrong it is. You don't even know how to solve the problems that you create, and it's kind of ridiculous, It's totally, utterly, and completely ridiculous, because you're not building a world of liberty and freedom. You're not. There is no liberty and freedom without law, and the law must be taught throughout the land. It must be publicly taught every 3 days, Torah. You cannot keep laws secret. You cannot undermine and erase laws and then use them as you see fit, like judge me by my music choice. You can't do stuff like that. And what forbids you from doing stuff like that? Torah. Don't tell me law is not my protection. I know law. I'm not a Jew, but I know Torah, And I will tell you that if you have these problems over here, don't solve them yourself, because you're going to mess them up. Forget this controlling the narrative. You want to be forgiven when you did wrong. You want to be relieved of that burden of guilt when you do wrong. You will never find relief in finding a scapegoat. You will never find relief that way. So yeah, I may be that abomination, desolation, okay? Because I'm going to tell you, it's not going to work. Apologize. Apologize again. Apologize again. If they won't accept your apology, learn to forgive yourself. Go jump in the lake, right? Forget this nonsense. Be washed clean, Don't do that stuff anymore. Not just seek forgiveness for your wrongs, but don't do the things that got you in the place where you need to apologize in the first place. Don't do them anymore. This is the way that you find salvation, I'm just saying. In the Bible, it says that your salvation is found through rest and repentance. Your silence is your salvation, right? But you guys who control the narrative, you make silence sound like permission. You think if someone is silent, like I've been silent, that you can just go ahead and run your cause, run your case, and no one's going to interfere, But a girl like me, I love Samson. I'll catch a fox by the tail and set their field on fire, burn up their harvest, don't play with me. I'll knock down your pillars, don't play with me, Just because I'm silent doesn't mean you have permission. There is a God on the throne, a God that I trust, and I have the humility to keep my mouth shut sometimes, And sometimes I've learned that you got to keep your mouth shut, because while they're digging that hole, they're going to be the ones that fall in it, And I don't play around like that. I don't get into petty nonsense, because I see you fighting me through people. And why am I going to go fight the people that you're fighting me through? That's too much. You never stop shooting people off at me. You never stop. You have an endless supply. But if I choose not to fight them and then I choose to call you out, guess what? This nonsense stops. Why? Because I've smashed your bow. You can't shoot arrows off at me anymore. If I smash your bow, you can't use the people around me anymore. Because everything that you do is just proof of what you're doing. And that bow gets unstrung. And you don't know what to do with yourself now. And so here I am telling you, apologize. Apologize at least 3 times. Go jump in a lake. Don't do that stuff anymore. And let it go. Rest and repentance. Shut your mouth. Stop trying to control the narrative, right? That's the way it goes. So that's my word for today. I'm sitting at the computer desk, and I got 2 kids stalking me for the computer and a cat over here meowing. So I'm going to call it a day. I'm going to say, God bless. All right, bye.